So thank you so much for Thea for joining me. I'm really excited to interview you. I have studied and understand introverts, but I don't have the in-depth knowledge you do. And I think this is going to be fantastic, especially when we talk about mindset. So just allow me a second to introduce you to our guest. So she's a life coach and introvert advocate. She helps introverts recognize and use their strengths to create a meaningful life that fits. She can be found on the website Introvertology and its related social media accounts. Sorry for butchering the name there, but your site looks wonderful.
That's fine.
Thank you so much for joining us. Tell us a little bit about how you became an introvert advocate.
Well, it started about 2 years ago. I was on Twitter, talking to people, and one person said that she had just come back from a PTA meeting or something like that. And all the other people that she was, speaking with seemed like they were enjoying themselves. They loved, being around all these other people, and, they're in their elements. And she was wondering what's wrong with me. And I said, oh, you're an introvert. You gain energy by being alone. And I posted a link to Susan Cain's website and her TED Talk. And so she was really relieved about that. And then less than a week later, another person was talking about how she seemed like she thought more and thought deeply more than she thought other people did. I'm like, no, you're just an introvert. It's not like, extroverts don't think deeply, but we're in our heads more. So
yeah, absolutely.
So there again, I showed her, the link to Susan Cain's TED Talk, and I just figured more people need to be told that you're just an introvert and there's nothing wrong with you. So that was the beginning.
Oh, absolutely. And that's so great. Isn't it wonderful how the universe keeps putting signs in front of you to lead you to what your true path is supposed to be?
Yeah. It was pretty crazy.
That's so great. So tell me, when you're working with your clients, what is the biggest thing that comes up or the misperception that they have?
The biggest thing that comes up is recognizing their strengths for strengths and not weaknesses. So a lot of times we talk about, small talk, and the introvert hates small talk. So we discuss how you can see it as a strength, how we're great at listening. And so, small talk is a kind of like a good way to use your strengths and your interest in other people. Because, just because we live in our heads doesn't mean we don't like people. So, just using your listening ability as a strength instead of, the lack of quickness in our verbal words as being a weakness.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful because, one's communication style impacts certainly the presence they have in a room. But then if you add that as well, extrovert versus introvert, when you don't understand the differences, it can make you feel both self-conscious because, from an extrovert's perspective, they think, wow, this person's not interested. They don't want to talk to me, when that's not necessarily the fact. So when did you really get started in this work?
Do you mean introvertology or coaching?
Both.
Coaching, I got started about a year ago. I took Coach U classes. I don't know if you're aware of that school. And then I really kind of started thinking of that as like my career about 6 months ago. So I'm still a pretty new coach, but it's been great. I love it. I've learned so much more about myself and, about my fellow introverts, and it's helped me to create content for introvertology too, because it's so intimate, like coaching is so, you get to see what other people are thinking basically and feeling. So it's been wonderful.
That's so good. And, new coach or not, I'm sure you've been doing some aspects of this for a lot of your life. I know that that's what I found with myself. When I finally said, this is it, I'm a coach, my friends were like, yeah, that's not news. You've been that to us for a long time, but don't charge us now. So I'm sure it's a similar thing. We have this natural ability to work with people or talk to people and and
Yeah.
bring out what needs to be brought out. So when you're dealing with introvertology, is it something that is well known? Do you come across a lot of people that don't really know what to do or how to be with as an introvert or with an introvert? Like, is it that prevalent around?
Yeah. So there's still a lot of misunderstanding about what introversion is, which is perfectly understandable because there's many schools of thought about what introversion is. You know, there's the Myers-Briggs. Personality psychologists have a different idea than the people who believe in Myers-Briggs. And so personality is just it's such a big concept that it's very easy to misunderstand it and come up with your own theories. So lots of people don't understand the difference between introversion and shy.
Right.
It's actually something that comes up a lot. So even with people who self-describe as an introvert, sometimes we do get into this idea and prescribe certain aspects of ourselves as being part of our introverted selves when it's really part of our shy selves. So that comes up a lot. And social anxiety, the interplay between introversion and social anxiety gets blurred a little sometimes too. So
yeah. And would you say that extroverts, I know that's not your area, but extroverts can also display elements of being shy or social anxiety? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's one of the things that I think is really important. So it's great that you're doing this work, because not only for introverts, but for really anybody who is working as a coach or in business, you need to understand the differences between the types of personalities that you're going to talk to in order to really reach them or allow them the space to come out to you.
Yeah, definitely. I think the discussion around the difference between introversion and shy, as you said, also helps extroverts as well.
Yeah.
Because there is a difference. Shy is more about the fear of judgment, whereas introversion is more about feeling at home in your head and by yourself. So I'm currently, me and another introvert coach are trying to petition various dictionaries to change their definition, because because several online dictionaries, they're doing more of the descriptive rather than prescriptive. So they're taking the common concept of introversion, which they say is shy. We don't quite agree. We think that the definition has changed over the past few years, particularly with Susan Cain's website and TED Talk and books. So we're trying to change that, because even the dictionaries right now are getting it wrong, and that's not helping anybody.
That isn't helping anybody. That's really great.
No.
I'm glad you guys took that on, because it is such an important aspect, and to have misinformation out there is just leading to more confusion, or to somebody maybe shutting down and thinking, well, I'm just shy, when perhaps they're not that at all. Yeah, that's so great. And so what would you say is your definition then of an introvert?
Well, a common definition is someone who gains energy by being alone. I've started to describe it more like someone who feels the most like themselves when they're alone. Because the research doesn't really back up the definition of energy at the moment. So that isn't to say that introverts don't like being with other people. They just feel like themselves a little more when they're, in a calm, quiet environment.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And it doesn't mean at all that introverts don't want to be around people ever.
No.
Either. Yeah, I think that's a really important distinction as well. I did a master's degree a couple years ago, and it was a values-based leadership program. And part of it was understanding our Myers-Briggs, but the in-depth one. And they had us do this exercise where we divided ourselves like along a U shape, and the extroverts, the strong extroverts on that scale, were at one end, and at the other end of the U was the introverts, strong introverts on that scale. And it was an interesting exercise because what we did is we each said what our perception was of the other side. So, introverts often think that extroverts, I'm an extrovert, talk all the time and don't think before they speak. And they're not thoughtful. And extroverts think that introverts are shy. And, that was some of the perceptions in that class. I'm not saying that all extroverts or introverts think that, but in that class, it was a really interesting exercise to see it in the same room and then have the perceptions come out and then to dispel them, because that's not at all what extroverts are very thoughtful and just like introverts are. What would you say is the hardest thing for an introvert in a group conversation to someone who's not comfortable with that? What is the hardest thing for them to overcome or to deal with in that situation?
There's a number of things. Where there's a study that found that introverts are more prone to thinking and planning, whereas extroverts the blood flow goes more towards the verbal processing. So first of all, it's kind of hardwired where, we're planning what to say versus, taking in the information and then wanting to say our views right away. So that's one thing, is just our natural tendency to want to think on the idea for a while before talking. Another thing is, it's not directly related, but a lot of introverts have problems with being assertive. So that's another, it's not directly related, but I think it kind of goes hand in hand with a lot of introverts, particularly who haven't really found out they're an introvert and think that there's something wrong with them or they're shy. So, I think once introverts get to understand their personality a little better, they can kind of become more assertive because they're understanding themselves. But I think, kind of being assertive is also often a problem.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. And I think also as society, or as we understand introverts and extroverts better, it'll help in both ways, because I know that, I work in a place where just my own perception, I would say that there's a good mix of the two, but the extroverts are often the ones you hear from. And, if you don't realize that it's not that the person doesn't have something to say, they might just want a little more time thinking about it and planning how they're going to say it. So, the extroverts need to allow the space for that to happen if they haven't practiced the assertiveness that, seems to be present with extroverts. And it's really just that our thoughts become words so much sooner.
So if in group conversations, if you're a manager, I suggest, talking to the introvert beforehand and saying, I noticed that you don't speak up very often. Is it okay if I call on you? Because that can give the introvert some time to kind of pause and think about what they want to say.
Yeah, that's really great. That's a great distinction and exercise for them to do. Now, when you're dealing in your life coaching practice, do you only deal with introverts, or that's just an area of expertise that you love to work with?
That's just an area of expertise. I have 2 extroverted clients. And it's really interesting, the difference between the things they come to me for. Like one of my extroverted clients, quite a while back, she wasn't able to finish her dissertation because she was too busy talking to other people at the library. So that, that wouldn't happen with any of my introverted clients.
That's so true. You're so right about that.
Yeah. So it's been, I actually really enjoy the conversations with my extroverted clients as well, just so I can get to know those kinds of people more.
Absolutely. And I think
Yeah.
that makes you to be a richer coach. That's funny that you say that because I'm an extrovert and I like to be around people. Um, so I often find myself working in coffee shops. In fact, I did my thesis in a coffee shop,
Mm,
not necessarily because I need to talk to people, but I need the energy of them being there. And then I
right.
have a friend who I met through the program. She's an introvert, and she would lock herself away for the same amount of time that I was working in the coffee shop, and then we'd meet at the end of the day and kind of talk about where we were. But
Mm.
the different preferences and working style is evident in that case, and beautiful, both works well.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I like your example there, because even if someone is an introvert, that doesn't mean they can't gain a lot of information from talking with other people.
Yeah.
So I think that was a great example of, how introverts aren't just solitary and hate people and are antisocial. We can also greatly benefit with talking to other people.
No, absolutely. And I think, the one example that our professor used that I really loved was that, both introverts and extroverts will go to the same party. The introvert after the party doesn't need an after party. They just want to go
Yeah.
home and recharge at that point. Whereas the extrovert could, all right, sure, we'll go out for coffee after, no problem.
Yeah.
So, it's just where our energy needs to kind of, and you said the research doesn't back it up with energy, but where we get our recharge from, I guess.
Yeah.
So when you're talking to clients, either or, around this idea of mindset or how they're working through their issues,
Mm.
what do you feel is the biggest, the common theme that comes through for you in the work that you do?
When they're working through their issues, well, I found that a lot of my introverted clients have already thought deeply about it, but they're in some kind of loop. Like they're second guessing, they just can't make a decision. That comes up a lot. Just people not being able to make a decision, even though they've thought about it deeply. And I think that kind of plays to the fear of, getting things wrong. But yeah, I would say not being able to make a decision is a huge one for my introverted clients. And just wishing that they didn't get things wrong or they made a bad decision. So there's a lot of work about, the fact that we can't know the future. We just have to, give up on some of our perfectionism tendencies, because you can't control what's going to happen. You can only, plan and hope and see what's going to come.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think, perfection is a fleeting idea anyhow, because, even the most, well-studied and popular artist, for example, would often tell you that they would go back and change something in their artwork if they could have the chance. So, it doesn't exist. There is no such thing as perfection. So it's great that you're helping them break that loop, because that's probably one of the biggest things that holds people back in their mindset. The other thing about that is that, from the work that I do around mindset, it's often that we're programmed to believe that you have to be the best of, whatever it is that you're doing. You have to work really hard and you can't make a mistake. You get in trouble. I mean, I don't know what it was like for you in school, but that was certainly something that came up for me is, it felt like a competition. I was a really good student, but I was competing against 2 or 3 other really good students. And I always felt that I had to, work harder or do more. What do you feel is the biggest thing that, we could tackle, us coaches could tackle and get the message out there about around the aspects of introversion or, around mindset?
Well, I would say the best thing coaches could do is just talk about authenticity and how introversion is really, normal. Or one big study found that we're 50.7% of the population. Whether that's true or whether it's a little off, we're still basically half, of the population. So I think the best thing coaches could do is just talk about how you need to accept yourself, not compare yourselves to others. And really, another thing that comes up is a lot of my clients believe they know what other people are thinking when they really don't, of course.
That's so true.
Yeah. So they think, I messed up on that conversation. I shouldn't have said that. And, you have to say, well, how do you know? You don't actually know unless you ask. So I think when you're working with introverts, it's important to make sure they accept themselves and that they're okay with letting go of, the perfectionist ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really great point. And, and that happens, the idea that other people, we think what other people are thinking happens for both extroverts and introverts. And, the idea that they're judging us is, there are people that judge us, no doubt. First of all, it's none of our business what they're thinking. But second of all, they're into themselves, just like we're in our heads and we're worried about what people think. They're in their heads worried about what people think. They're not focusing externally. We're very, unless we've done a lot of self-work, we're designed to be, or not designed, programmed to be very self-centered people. And I'm not saying that as a negative. I'm just saying that as a programmed aspect. So, we're stuck worried about, oh, geez, I just put that post up. And, especially new business owners, I feel that happens a lot. What if I post this and I'm not using the right words? And, it's so much better to just be who you really want to be and use your real voice.
Yeah, definitely.
So when you're online or when you're interacting with people, what is your favorite medium to reach them?
That's a good question. I used to enjoy writing, but then I had a few blocks of my own that I've had to get over with my own life coaches. And I'm getting back towards that right now. I'm finding my love for writing again. But I also I love Twitter.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, because it gives you the chance to get to know people, but kind of like on your own terms. So, and in bite-sized chunks.
Yeah.
So if you don't want the conversation to go on, you can just leave the computer.
Yeah. That's a really good point. And, I love the idea that you have your own coach as well. I think that's something, especially when you're dealing with people who are new to coaching, they're either a new coach themselves or new in business. Investing in themselves seems to be a scary thing. And, with good reason. I had the same fears myself, but I have my own coach and will probably always have my own coach. What do you think is the best thing for people to know about coaching? Like, why would people need coaches?
Well, like we were saying before, how, we're kind of programmed to be in our heads and think about the spotlight effect. So how we're just focused on ourselves. If you have a coach, it really helps because they bring an outside perspective, and it's not one that's like, judgmental or has this huge past with you like a friend or a family would. It's someone coming totally fresh with their own objective ideas and worldview, and they want you to succeed. They don't have their own agenda they're trying to push or anything like that. So that's why I would really recommend a life coach.
Yeah, oh my gosh, that's a really great description too. And I love what you called it, the spotlight effect. Tell me a bit more about that. That's a really great expression.
It's actually not mine. It is a psychology expression, and it just refers to the fact that we think the spotlight's always on us.
Yeah. Right.
When, if everybody has their own spotlights, then we're just concentrating on ourselves, and there's really no huge spotlight on you. It's like 5 billion other spotlights. So
yeah, no, that's really great. Actually, I saw a Facebook post today that said Dan's like no one's watching because they're all on their phones. And so it's kind of the same idea, like do and be how you want to be. Nobody's really paying attention, and those that are paying attention are the ones that need to be anyhow. Those are the ones that if you're really yourself, you're meant to be attracting to yourself anyhow. Do you work with a spiritual practice or?
No, so I'm
No.
pretty different in terms of other
Yeah.
life coaches in that manner. No spiritual practice. I didn't grow up spiritual at all. That's not to say my parents are atheists. They just figured that we would find our own way. And hopefully you. Is there a lot of noise? Can you still hear
No.
me?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. Okay. No, I mean I do meditation. I'm trying to regularly do yoga now. But yeah, I don't really have any spiritual practice, which I know is very unusual for a life coach.
Well, that's good. I mean, we all have our own path. And, to be honest, I didn't always have a spiritual practice either, because to me, spirituality meant religion, and the two, it was not a good combination. Now that
Yeah.
I was able to separate it, it feels much more, I'm much more at peace with it. I love that you meditate and do yoga. Those are both wonderful practices. I feel like I don't do enough yoga. How do you find, for meditation, how do you find turning off your head, your brain, and trying to relax into the moment? What is your favorite thing to do to be able to relax into meditation?
Well, I was doing guided meditation through an app called Simply Being for a while. And now I've gotten better at it enough where I don't really need that anymore. But the guided meditation was really good at first because you have this person to kind of like bring you back when you get too deep into your thoughts, and you're like, oh yeah, I remember what I'm supposed to be doing now.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah. Now, when you're working with clients, is it something that you do online?
Yeah, I have a few face-to-face clients, but the majority are online.
That's great. Yeah. And what do you feel is the, outcome that they're looking for? Maybe that's not fair to ask, because they might not all be looking for the same thing, but what do you think is the common theme there?
A lot of them come to me. I don't know if there's a common theme. I suppose what ends up happening is just self-acceptance, but that's not what they come to me for normally.
Yeah.
It's help with making a decision. It's help networking, what to do with small talk, what to do just in conversations in general. So one recent client had a problem with kind of small talk in general, because they thought that it was up to them to keep the conversation going. When I was like, no, there's two of you. It's a mutual thing. Just work on your strength listening. So yeah, I think there's not one thing. It's a myriad of things, but it generally comes down to self-acceptance.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And, that's, when someone was talking to me about what is the common thing that your clients come to you about, and all of them, it was about self-esteem, but they didn't know that. They all had seemed very confident, successful people. And then when we start digging a little bit, we realize that, well, I knew it anyhow, and just, I'm sure you do, but what ends up happening and behind the scenes is that they have self-esteem issues or self-worth issues. So that's so great that comes out as well with your clients. And I think it's so very important that we're here doing that work for that very reason. It's not just that we've been programmed that way, but it's also, how do you break that programming in order to move forward and accept who you really are, and do it in a way that, that you can love yourself for it.
Yeah, it is. It's a process, I think. It's a long process. Because many of my clients have extroverted family members. They think that, talking is the only way to communicate. Because they have all these, cultural ideas which they're taken on, and that's kind of overshadowed their own strengths. So, yeah, self-acceptance and mindset is huge, because without that, it's hard to know your strengths if you don't accept yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And, what I've found, and this is, for both extroverts and introverts, a lot of times the things that we were shunned for as a kid are often our strengths. And so
Mm,
we're very hesitant to put that out there because it was something that we used to get in trouble for.
right. Yeah, that's an
Have you
excellent
found that?
point. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really too bad. I mean, our parents did the best they could, and parents, and it's not just parents, school, society did the best that it could.
Yeah.
We had to go through it all to learn what we needed to, but the impact that has on us is really, it can be really profound. Do you work
Definitely.
with, what is your ideal client?
That's a great question. Um, I love clients who have big ideas. So normally that means like business ideas, but sometimes it's just, you know, moving out of their parents' house. Sometimes it's ideas that seem big to
Right.
them. Um, but they just kind of need the outside perspective to get them through it, because there's all of these, they're just overthinking it way too much, and so they just need these little pushes to make sure that they're not holding themselves back, basically, by thinking instead of doing, which is another thing that comes
Yeah,
up
it's so
frequently.
huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me a bit more about that thinking, rather than doing.
um, So I had one client who was trying to decide between going to go back to school, or um, I think it was start another career, or take some job. And she had been thinking about it for months. Like, she was just stuck thinking about it, because she was once again trying to decide what the best option was, when you don't know. All you can do is choose the option you believe will be the best outcome. You can't know the best outcome. So yeah, it was really interesting trying to have her emotionally come to a realization that it doesn't have to be perfect, that you'll find your own path. That action is kind of one of the ways of finding your path, instead of thinking, because thinking won't really change the way you're going right now.
Yeah, that's so great. That is a really, really important part, I think, for everyone to understand. And that's true with a spiritual practice or not. It's
Mm.
through action that you start to see the path that you're meant to go on. And, the other thing that I think, and you tell me if this is true for you as well, is no matter what decision we make, it's never really a wrong decision. There was always an opportunity to learn something
Oh
or
yeah.
to discover something new that we wouldn't have seen otherwise.
Yeah, definitely. So that's something I try and tell my clients too, but it doesn't always stick.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's a tough realization for them to, I'm sure, to accept that it can be that easy. Because
Yeah.
sometimes if you make it over simple, humans are designed to make things harder than they need to be. My coach said the other day, let me think about it, say it the right way. Um, we are designed for greatness, but programmed for struggle. And I
Mm,
think that's so great.
yeah, definitely. I think, yeah, it's often just internal struggle. I mean, there's external struggles as well, but it's just, yeah, a lot of my clients are just fighting with themselves and
Yeah.
their own perfectionism, and their own um, tendency to overthink and want this perfect path laid in front of them, instead when they should just be starting the work and improving and tweaking, because life doesn't always happen the way you expect. So yeah, I love
Yeah,
that.
no, it doesn't. Yeah, that's really great. What would be, if you had to recommend one or two books to people about in introverts or introversion, what would you recommend?
Well, Susan Cain's Quiet is the most famous one, so
Yes,
I
I
would
haven't read
recommend
that yet.
that.
I'll add that to my list.
It's good. It's she mentions a lot of different um, aspects of introversion and cultures. So she mentions like the Asian culture, spiritual culture, and kind of looks at how those concepts intersect with introversion. There's another one that I like called Introvert Power, by Lori Holgowi, and she's very like rah rah yay introverts. So that's a great one. A third one is well, there's a bunch of good ones. If you want one that's kind of accessible and it's more like personal, The Introvert's Way by Sophia Demblin. And it's, you know, it's very bite-sized. You can just like read a chapter and then put it down. It's basically a bunch of blog posts, but she's a fun writer.
Oh, that's great. That's so good. You know, every time I do an interview or read a book, I probably pick up 5 more for my list. So this is great. Yeah. I love reading. And I like the aspect that you work with both introverts and extroverts. And I think it's really important that we all understand that a little bit different. And as a coach, I work with both as well, because it really is, although we approach a problem or a situation differently, I really feel that the essence of the problem tends to be the same. So, you know, the self-acceptance, that's something that, you know, is at core for all of us. Yeah. We may perceive it to be different though, which I think is so interesting.
Right. Yeah, I think so. I think it's, you know, the same common struggles that so many of us have, and that, you know, that's kind of like ingrained, like your coach was telling you about how we're programmed to struggle. There's common themes, but I think also the stories we tell each other, we tell ourselves about introversion and extroversion, I think also plays into that, because we have this narrative that we tell about ourselves, and also this narrative we tell about how the culture sees us, and that also affects how you know, the life coaching goes and how our lives go.
Yeah, I like that. That's really important, I think. I also feel that sometimes it doesn't matter if it's introversion or extroversion, although I will say I probably have seen it more commonly for introversion. I see people using it as an excuse not to do something, or as their reason for not moving forward with something. Yeah. And have you come across that? Have you seen that?
Yeah, plenty of times. Yeah.
So I'm an introvert, so I didn't post the video, or, you know, whatever it is. And I, you know, it triggers me, probably because that's something that I need to speak up more on, but and I should. That just made me there's some action I'm going to take now if I see another post like that, because I think it's although there are differences, and it's really important to understand what they are, it is not a reason not to put yourself out there, or, you know, an excuse is an excuse is an excuse. It doesn't matter if you're an extrovert or an introvert.
Yeah. And I think most people realize that, like, logically. But emotionally, it's often a different thing. But that is something I've noticed a lot. I'm actually hopefully going to be working on a video for introverts series to help introverts get more comfortable with being on video. I'm doing this with somebody who used to produce videos for a living. So hopefully that will turn out, because this, you know, I'm not putting myself out there because I'm an introvert is just an excuse. It's not really a valid excuse either, because all of us, you know, part of being a good coach or business person is that you're stepping out of your comfort zone in order to do things that you need to do. I mean, of course, if you could hire someone to do the stuff you're not good at, that's great, but part of it is also just pushing yourself. And I think that's what a lot of introverts are really grasping onto, this concept of introversion as an excuse when it's just holding them back.
Yeah, that's a really great idea. I don't know who we're going to take questions in a few minutes, Alessandro. If you want to stay here and talk to us in a few minutes. I think that's a really good point, because I don't think at any point are we doing ourselves or anybody that we're meant to reach any favors by allowing something to be an excuse. And it doesn't have to be that, it can be anything. So, you know, I always find it funny when hi Alessandro. I always find it funny when we are in the presence of other people, what we use to hold ourselves back. And I think that's true for everyone. I don't think it matters what your style is.
Right.
If you were to give someone 3 points to take into consideration for introverts, or for introverts to know about themselves, what would they be?
3 points. One is to what we've been talking about a lot in this interview is the spotlight effect.
Yes.
And to just realize that to give yourself some slack, basically. Not everybody's staring at you, not everybody is hanging on your every word. So, just give yourself some slack and don't worry too much about what you said in that conversation 10 years ago, because it's past. It's in the past. And, I do that still. I still like, oh my God, that embarrassing thing that happened 5 years ago. But the least, the less you can do that, the better, I think, because it's just not helping anybody.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah, and then the second thing would be to focus on your strengths. Listening, really not needing anybody else for your energy, it really is a strength. Not a lot of introverts realize that. So yeah, that's the second one. Focus on your strengths instead of focusing on your weaknesses. Let's see, the third thing. I would say, start doing. Don't plan as much, even though we're kind of programmed for planning. Start doing. You can always change your plan in the future. Planning and tweaking, and get the forward movement, because that's where the change and the progress happens.
Yeah, I think that's really beautiful. It's so true. And when you say focus on strengths, I really liked what you said there about, the strength of listening. That it's so true. Like that is an incredible strength. And the fact that you're able to, do it with yourself and, think for yourself, and then, interject into a group. I think that's really great. And I also think, from my experience, I think that responses from introverts tend to be more elegant, if that makes sense, because extroverts are thinking as we're talking, which has its place and can be really great. But sometimes we don't have the elegance, I think, that introverts do, because they've spent more time thinking about it.
That's an interesting point, because I think I would have said the opposite.
Oh.
I would have said we trip over our words, but maybe you're right. I have to listen a little more, I suppose, to figure that out.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, I think that if there's any tripping on the words, it's probably because you might be worried what the other people are thinking as you said it. And I don't mean you necessarily, but in general. Right. But I feel like there is a real thoughtfulness when an introvert does interject in a conversation. And I don't know that I would have been aware of it if I hadn't done the program that I did. I had a lot of perception. In fact, I don't even think I really understood what introvert and extrovert meant. And, I really did think people were just shy and not able to talk. And I was willing to talk all the time. And then I realized, hey, wait a minute. Not everybody wants to hear you all the time just because you're willing to fill the space. So yeah. I think that that's really important. So I am so glad that you're doing the work you do, and that you were willing to come on and do an interview with me. I think it's fabulous. No. You absolutely should do an interview series.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. This was fun and not as scary as I thought it was going to
be. Well, that's good. This is a great example too for your clients, because I think, the more that we can share our message, whatever it is, if it's about introvert, extrovert, or if it's just really about, what is the thing that is unique and special about us, the more that people can understand and really see that self-acceptance is a struggle for most people. There's a few people out there that have it figured out, but not a lot.
Yeah.
I think that's so great. I'm going to put the link to your site here really quick. And I love the name of it, by the way.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, that's not it. There we go. Yeah, and if there's anything else that you'd like to share with people, please do. Is there?
Well, I'm working on a workshop and ebook on introverted strengths. So if anybody would like to know more about their introverted strengths, just go to my website. On the very top, there's a link to my newsletter, and I announce all the stuff I'm doing on my newsletter. So yeah, if anyone wants to know more about their introverted strengths, just go there.
Oh yeah, that's so great. And we all have introversion and extroversion in us. So I think I think that's probably relevant work for anyone that's wanting to know about their presence in the world generally. Yeah. So this is so great. This has been absolutely fabulous. I will upload it to YouTube, and feel free to share it. Okay. Yeah. Where are you, by the way, in the country?
I'm in California.
Oh, that's so great. Actually, I just spent some time on Sunday with 3 people from California.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it was here in Canada. They came to Montreal, but
okay. Yeah. How did they find the cold? Because I'm like freezing right now.
Yeah, well, when they came, it was actually warmer than it normally is here. Oh, okay. So it was right around like our 0 mark. We're Celsius, you guys are Fahrenheit. So, but before they came, it was supposed to be -4 Fahrenheit, and then it warmed up when they got here. So, but they wore big jackets, and we went shopping one day, and I wore just a blazer and a wraparound scarf like this, and I was fine. And they had these big winter jackets on. So
yeah, I understand that. I lived in England for 4 years, and I was so overdressed than anybody else there.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah, it's true, because when you grow up in a warm climate, I'm sure that that's the case for sure. Well, this has been absolutely fabulous. I love speaking with you. I'm going to follow all your work and share it wherever I can.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I enjoyed this.
Yeah, thank you. Talk to you soon.
Bye.